Welcome back, kings, queens, and royalty, to a lemon squeeze. My name is Barrett, and I am the host of this show. This is a talk show where I sit down with young adults of color and discuss different issues that affect our community that don't get talked about in the classroom. This week, we'll be discussing navigating healthy, open, and polyamorous relationships. And I gotta say, this was probably one of my favorite lemon squeeze conversations I've had. I was blessed with the opportunity to sit down with 7 amazing individuals, all who have either been in a polyamorous or open relationship or who currently is in one. Throughout the past couple years, I didn't heard about open relationships where a couple might decide to bring a third individual in the relationship. And I ain't gonna lie, I never really understood it. I've always had this preconceived image in my head of what love should look like, right? One individual meets another individual, they date, become exclusive, meet mama, get married, have kids, and die. I was never aware that monogamy isn't the only way to find happiness and love with other people. I learned that open relationships and polyamory, which is the practice of having more than one intimate partner, isn't just a roundabout way to have sex with other people while still being with your partner, despite many people thinking that's exactly what it is. How they were introduced to non-monogamy, we talked about the differences between monogamous relationships and polyamorous relationships, jealousy, we discussed self-realization, so much. This episode is sponsored by Big Mom Lemonade, good taste, good time, the best tasting drink on campus. Before we get into the episode, make sure y'all subscribe to the channel, leave a like if you enjoyed the content, and share this video with a friend. Trust me, it goes a long way. All right, enough of the chit chat. Welcome to episode 11 of A Lemon Squeeze.
There's so many scenarios that can come into play with an open relationship that you kind of have to have the conversations around, okay, so what happens if you really start to feel for this person?
How do you find validity in your relationship? How does society see your relationships as valid when you're not on that escalator?
And I've felt jealousy. I think everybody in this virtual room has felt it. It's not like we don't feel jealousy. One of the tools that's been really helpful for me in navigating jealousy is remembering that my relationship with this partner is different than their relationship with somebody else or my relationship with somebody else. That every relationship is unique. If that person fulfills something that I can't fulfill, great.
Yeah, y'all ready? I'm ready. Y'all ready? All right, let's get it. Okay, so my first kind of question, and this is again from someone who's never been in a poly relationship, now having a kind of understanding of what it is, what led you individually to a poly relationship or open relationship? What was that first point to where you were like, let me do it this way instead of that way? Go ahead, Kayla. I'm gonna go to you first.
So, like I was saying, I've been bisexual for as long as I can remember, way back to elementary school when you were first finding out what you like and stuff, really. And as I got older, I realized I kind of had connections with more than one person. I like to give my love around. And then what led me into it really was I was always uncomfortable with it at first, the thought of it, because, in my household, we are raised monogamy. And so you're with one person, with anyone else within that one person, that's just not normal. Last year I had a girlfriend and me and her were just talking about it. And I was like, yeah, I would love to try this. It's something that I wanted to really get my feet into, but I wanted to discuss it with her as well to see if it was something she was comfortable with. And she actually was, but really it just became about our boundaries. Right. And so then once we laid that down too, I felt like it was a lot more comfortable. And then ever since then, even in my current relationship now, we're currently monogamous, but I've even told him I'm open to including another person. He is also very open-minded. Mine is different from everyone's because I learned that every poly relationship is different. So with ours, it's more of someone that could be just for me, or it could be for me and him.
What led me to polyamory was actually meeting one of my current partners, and he was polyamorous. He sort of introduced me to the lifestyle. I honestly didn't believe him at first when I learned about having multiple partners and everyone knowing what was going on. I was pretty sure he was lying to me. And I decided to try to just try it. I was newly single out of a 5-year-long monogamous relationship. And I was just like, why not? Why not try it? And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Through that process, I ended up learning a lot about myself. I realized I was bisexual. I ended up realizing that polyamory was pretty amazing, and it was perfect for what I was looking for in my relationships and for the lifestyle that I was leading.
So, okay, so 2011, I got divorced. I was married for 7 years, monogamous marriage. And so I was doing a lot of reading. I think I had something to prove to myself, like I want to be this macho masculine. There's this kind of image that I wanted to live up to. And I was like, oh, polyamory, that means I get to sleep with a bunch of women. That sounds great. So that's what got me into it. And as I continued, I found that it's really confronting and challenging for myself, which I found extremely valuable. So the reason that I continue it is very different from the reason that I got into it. Guys tend to be like, oh yeah, I'd love to date all these women all at the same time. But then I'm like, yeah, but then when they see other people,
right,
that's when the confrontation and the challenge happens. They don't even consider that. They're like, what? They get to see other people too? Yes, they do.
I grew up in a household with two parents that were married and have been together since basically they were kids. Unplanned pregnancy leads to marriage, leads to successful marriage, leads decades later, here we are. So I thought that, I think very much psychologically, I was supposed to emulate that. I was supposed to from a kid, so high school, I'm a sophomore, I meet my first girlfriend, wasn't interested in girls, just video games and soccer before. My senior year, I managed to complicate the fuck out of my life. I met these two other girls that at the time I didn't think that I had any kind of romantic feelings for. But in retrospect, I think that that's probably what that was, but they were just really close friends to me. And I tried to pitch those relationships as being safe to my girlfriend at the time with various titles and structure and whatever. But ultimately, she wasn't comfortable and she tried to make me choose, the whole ultimatum. I'm sure we've all seen it. It didn't really work out. I wanted to keep my close friends that, I had no intentions of doing anything with, because in my mind, serial monogamy. A year out of high school for me, that relationship didn't work out. And I ended up dating one of the two girls. We ended up in an on and off relationship for probably 7 years after that, dealing with all the things, all the people that we saw in between. Kind of taught me that really the most frustrating thing about having a partner that was sexually involved with somebody else was being lied to about it. It was the dishonesty that really fucked with me. It wasn't so much that she was sleeping with other people. That became normalized pretty quickly. And I realized that I just didn't like when she lied to me. If you're in a relationship and you can't tell a person what you want, what you think, how you feel, then your relationship is just suffocating, and you're suffocating in it. You're trapped in a cage. Fast forward to my mid-20s, stopped dating her, and I met my first partner, who's not here. But when we finally started dating in person, we said we were going to be in an open relationship. We didn't really date outside of each other for 2 years. And then I met this one, Ashley. Now it's been 2 years since then. Oh, no, sorry. It's been 3 years since then. Now we're here for now, all in person for the first time.
Amazing.
Yeah, to kind of share my side, my story is a lot like Tabitha's. My partner Mar introduced me to polyamory and open relationships, and I guess our second or third date, he told me, I have another partner, and I was kind of is this real? Kind of what Tabitha was saying. I was really confused, and he introduced me, to the idea of an open relationship, and I decided to try it. So since then, I have definitely had a lot of challenges with kind of, learning more about it, and just becoming comfortable with it. But it's been a really interesting and great experience for me. Like he said, we've been long distance for a while, so it's great being able to shift into this new phase where we're all cohabitating and learning how to conduct that. But overall, it's been a great experience, and I'm really glad that he introduced me to the world of polyamory.
We need these stories. So I feel a lot of people have similar circumstances, but don't really have anyone or can see any like similar, you know what I'm saying, anyone in their similar position. So like they kind of like shy away from it. But like the reason why I asked that question is because I know there are people who are interested in this kind of like, you know, love, but they don't really have anyone or have anything to, you know, kind of like ask questions or refer to, you know what I'm saying? So that's why I wanted to, because I mean, all their stories are very, very different. And that's what I was looking for. They're all different. Did anyone else, did everyone share? Everyone shared? All right, cool. So a lot of y'all have been in monogamous relationships kind of before you transitioned and kind of found your partner who was interested in poly, or maybe you were interested in poly and y'all kind of like did it that way. From someone who has never been in a poly relationship, what are the biggest differences between navigating that or trying to navigate a healthy monogamous relationship from navigating now a poly relationship where it's open, or your partner might have other partners and they're spending time with them as well? For me, from my monogamous mind, I'm gonna call it a monogamous mind because that's just what it is. You know, like I have the capacity, you know what I'm saying, for barely one person. This is me, right? So I've always wondered like what were the biggest kind of like differences, good or bad. Because I mean, there's good and bad and everything, right? So like, what were the big differences to y'all in y'all personal experiences?
The biggest challenge, well, not challenges, one of the biggest differences by far is the level of communication that's needed. Like the level of intense conversation, of understanding what somebody's boundaries are, of understanding, and that's not to say that you don't have those conversations in a monogamous relationship, but I think it's kind of like a one and done situation where you have the conversation, you've kind of established it, and you've said, all right, so we're monogamous, so like ideally these scenarios aren't going to come into play. There's so many scenarios that can come into play with an open relationship that you kind of have to have the conversations around, okay, so what happens if you really start to feel for this person? What happens if you don't have the time for me, but you know, you're starting to spend more time over here, or vice versa? What happens if I start feeling more deeply for this person than you? Like, we really have to plan and coordinate those scenarios, and just have the conversations around it and be open to the idea of having tough conversations in the future, because they're bound to happen as well. Testing, in my opinion, is something that should be done more frequently, because, you know, condoms aren't used all the time, nor are they used well every time. So I think testing is, and being open about that conversation, right, about your status, about your health, is definitely more transparent. The communication and the conversations are a lot more transparent, and it's something that's really benefited me now being in a monogamous relationship. I guess one thing is it's taught me that everybody has the capacity to do this to some extent. Being able to communicate about it is completely different, and that's really the main key to making any type of relationship successful, whether it's poly or monogamous. And so it's something that I've been able to bring to my current relationship and have these deep conversations way more frequently than I think I would have if I hadn't had these experiences.
One of the biggest things for me that has been in my own journey that has been different from monogamy to polyamory is sort of navigating and honestly ditching the relationship escalator. And it's sort of the idea that a relationship has an escalator. You meet, you fall in love, you get engaged, you get married, you have kids, buy a house, meet parents, all that sort of thing. And you go up the escalator until finally the end when you die together. And that's, you know, you've lived a perfect life. You've gone all the way up the escalator. Many polyamorous relationships don't have an escalator. You may meet someone like Stephen, who is in a relationship with someone who already has kids, and maybe you won't be able to have kids with that person. So what does that mean? Where does your relationship go when it can't go up the normal escalator? And so what I've found is there is no relationship escalator for many poly relationships, and sometimes there is. Sometimes there definitely is, and you can follow that same sort of monogamous escalator while adding other people in. But ultimately, there is no map, and you have to create your own map. That escalator provides a lot of value and a lot of validity to our relationships. And so how do you find validity in your relationship? How does society see your relationships as valid when you're not on that escalator? I have one long distance partner, the one who introduced me to polyamory. We've been together 6 years now. We've never been able to be on the relationship escalator because we live in different countries. He has a wife and children. And then a few years after we met, I met my current partner, who I now live with, and I never expected to live with them. I met her and I fell in love with her, and then she and her husband and I fell in love, and we sort of formed a triad, and now we're all engaged and going to be married, and we're having children together. And we already have 2 children, and I'm pregnant with our third. And so it's sort of a weird, situation where it's, the first 2 children are from my partner, Alexis, and, we're sort of creating our own escalator, and we're so fortunate to have a lot of great support in our lives.
I think the biggest transition for me was I used to be really jealous in my monogamous relationship. There were signals that he would throw off that kind of made me feel like that. Like, he was very secretive. He would keep things from me, would hide his phone, or if I asked him questions, he would get very defensive about it. It was just very mentally and verbally abusive. And so it made me really question my own self and my self-esteem and my own worth. Once I shifted out of that and kind of transitioned into an open relationship mindset and a polyamorous mindset, that jealousy kind of went away because, like Bella and Tabitha had both stated, there's a lot of communication that goes into it and a lot of discovery. And so with that, there became a lot more trust because of that openness. And even in that monogamous relationship, when I had suggested trying an open relationship, they were like, oh, if you just want to go sleep with other people, just go do it then. Just go be a hoe. Oh, if you want to cheat on me, just cheat on me. Like, because I know that's what you want to do. And I was like, that's actually not what I want to do. I'm trying to open a line of communication. Like, if you want to do that with other people, like, let me know and I'll do it as well. Like Mar was saying, it was just that not knowing, that not being told what was specifically happening. Ever since that difference in it, like, the jealousy has gone away. The trust is more amplified. The communication is more amplified. Because even in regular relationships, partners feel like they have to hide certain things from their significant others. Say there's a bad female walking down the street and the guy wants to look at her, but he's worried his girl is watching and it's going to be, oh, so you just want to look at her while I'm sitting right here. And in my head, I'm looking at her too, nigga. Like, I'm watching her too. I'd be like, dang, babe, look at her ass. I mean, but look at her butt. That thing's fat. He'd be like, I know, right? Like, I love having my boyfriend be my homie. Like, that's like the best part to our relationship. And I don't feel like we would have that if we weren't in this open situation where we're both open-minded to the idea of adding in another partner like that.
I mean, I've felt jealousy. I think everybody in this virtual room has felt it. Like, it's not like we don't feel jealousy, but it's how you navigate what that feeling is and kind of understand it. And one of the tools that's been really helpful for me in navigating jealousy is remembering that my relationship with this partner is different than their relationship with somebody else or my relationship with somebody else. That every relationship is unique and has its own things to offer and its own way of connecting and loving and all of those things. And it's comparing apples and oranges. If that person fulfills something that I can't fulfill, great, because that's not something that I can fulfill, right?
It's exactly what you talked about, which is jealousy. So since I've been polyamorous, I've dated women who have a lot of experience in polyamory, and I've also dated women who have never heard of polyamory before and are trying it out by dating me. And what I experienced was with the women who've been polyamorous for like 10 years, 14 years, if they go on a date with another man or just somebody else, there's no jealousy there because I know that they're not looking to replace me. They can go on dates and I'm still there. They're not looking to like find somebody better. But for the women who are just trying out polyamory, but are actually like monogamous, when they date someone else, I know that their mindset is like, they haven't switched to a polyamorous mindset yet. So they're actually looking to replace me. So jealousy is actually stronger when I'm dating someone who has a monogamous mindset.
I wrote down a little note, expectations, because Barrett, you were talking about kind of in the monogamous mindset, there's like, you already have these preconceived notions, and Tabitha was touching on this on the relationship escalator too, that like society and movies and family and all of this stuff has like told you this is what a relationship looks like, this is what you should expect, this is what's going to happen. And what ends up happening is you don't talk about it, and you go into the relationship expecting all these things, and inevitably something is going to go a little bit differently because people are different. I don't like the idea that one person can check all of your boxes, or needs to, or has to, or is required to, right? Like that's so much pressure on one person, and so much pressure on finding this like perfect person who like happens to like line up exactly with all of your things. And you'll find people that line up very closely to all of those things. You'll find people that line up with like 2 of those things. And I think that's what's wonderful about being able to be in a relationship with more than one person, is that you can fulfill those different needs with different people.
When we have this idea that everything we're looking for is somehow packaged within one person, right? That is the common, in our monogamous mind, I'm gonna say it again, saying like we're looking for that person to check all those boxes, you know what I'm saying? And then if when they come short of that, it's like, now I feel away because now I was expecting you, especially when you're 7, 8, 10 years in to a marriage or relationship. It's like, I feel like people, especially like younger people, they're looking for that. Like they're looking for that person who kind of checks off all those boxes. And then when they have trouble doing that, it's like they get frustrated with themselves. And it's just like, oh man, like I can't find the right one. Like, people ain't shit. It's just like they really take it out, and I think that's a very interesting like point.
I feel like this is important to say, that like polyamory is not better or the way to go, right? Like monogamy works really well for people too, and I think if anything, maybe monogamous mindsets can adopt some of these polyamorous mindsets, in that like maybe you want to only be in like cohabitating sexual romantic relationship with one person. But the fact that other people can fulfill other needs can still apply to you, insofar as like having a best friend, or having the family or the community that you rely on. And I think what's really important about this idea is that you don't expect to be like that all parts of you are fulfilled by that one person. Like they can fulfill specific parts for you, and maybe you don't have any romantic or sexual relationships with anyone outside of that, and that's totally great. But understanding that like we need community. I think that's the big thing for me, is that like community is the key. And whether that's many relationships or whether that's, platonic or not, it's whatever you want to do. But I don't want to make it sound like polyamory like is the way to go and monogamy sucks, and like that's not true. But it's definitely like what a lot of us in this room have chosen because it works best for us.
For sure. I think Bella had her hand up, and then I'm gonna go to Steve.
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly add, like, the idea of somebody else checking off your boxes is also something that I've had to, in my journey through all the things, understand that, like, first and foremost, you shouldn't really rely on other people to check your boxes, right? If you can't set the expectations for yourself to check your own boxes and fulfill yourself, you're going to be searching endlessly. And no matter how many partners you have, whether it's one or multiple, if you yourself can't fulfill your own boxes, like you're kind of setting yourself up for not necessarily failure, but for a longer journey. And I think I learned it really during that period of just being completely single and my whole phase and doing whatever I felt like I wanted to do, realizing like I have to kind of fulfill myself. I have to ensure that my cup is full before I'm trying to pour into others and expecting them to pour back into me. I think that's something that can go for a monogamous relationship or a polyamorous relationship, relationship with your family, with your friends, at work. Like, how full is your cup? How much are you pouring into yourself before you're pouring into somebody else or expecting somebody to pour back into you?
There's different kinds of monogamy. There's this is what Barry
we talked about this
days ago. When people talk about polyamory, they're saying, oh, there's this kind of polyamory, there's that kind of polyamory. Like each of us here on this call has a different setup, like a different structure. And the monogamous side of it is not like this one giant thing called monogamy. That's also a spectrum. Like, what kind of monogamy do you want? To give an example, it's like maybe you're going on you bring your friend or your best friend to a party with you, but not your spouse or your partner. In some monogamous relationships, that would be okay. And in other monogamous relationships, that would not be okay. So it's worthwhile to discuss, like, okay, what is this type of monogamy? Where is the line here in terms of like the things that I'll do only with you and the things that I can do with other people, right? Now, it tends to be understood that it's like sexual romantic, right? And a lot of the gray areas tend to be like the social aspects, going to a party with someone else and not even inviting your partner, right? But inviting somebody else, right? Those tend to be the common gray areas. But also there could be like, okay, yeah, you can go make out with other people. That's fine. You can flirt with other people. You can flirt with other people when I'm not around, or you can only flirt with people when I'm around. So like these things that we're talking about in terms of communication doesn't just apply to polyamory. It'll also benefit monogamy, but it's just that it's harder to get away with poor communication in polyamory.
Ashley, like, did you even know about polyamory before Mark came to you and introduced you to it? Or was it like a totally new thing for you?
Yeah, so from what I remember, I'd heard the term open relationship. I was generally familiar with what it was. I hadn't heard the term polyamory. But in terms of like how it would look in like practice, I was very unfamiliar with it. One of the issues I had when I was transitioning from, monogamous relationships to a polyamorous one was kind of rewiring my brain as to what was wrong and what was right. So when I went to college and there were other people I was interested in, it felt wrong to me. And communicating with him and being transparent about what I was doing, what my intentions were, was really difficult for me because I had the tendency to want to hide it or to be translucent and not, say some things but not everything. And shame. It just felt like it was morally wrong, which is, playing into the whole indoctrination of like monogamous relationships are like the standard and like the like way to live your life. So we actually had a lot of, points of tension and arguments where he would kind of pretty much know what was going on, but he could, hear that I wasn't being transparent about it. And that made him really angry just because, he talked about lying and just wanting to know what was going on. So, communication was just something that I really had to work on and kind of rewire my brain and just understand that, it's not like what you're doing that's wrong. It's just you have to be transparent. You have to be open about it. Otherwise, the relationship is just not going to work.
I had to have an awareness that she was going to feel all the things that I remember feeling when I was younger, like the guilt and the shame and kind of feeling like, yeah, he's telling me it's okay to talk about this, but is it really? And it's like, no, like we're going to like drill this in. This is fine. You can say whatever you feel. You can do whatever you want to do. Obviously, like I want you to communicate about it, but like none of this is inherently wrong.
And I love that verbiage of like rewiring your brain, because like I can only imagine like how much I would have to, if I was in that position, like have to rewire a lot of the things that are like monogamous minds are used to or are not used to. Can definitely cause friction when we're scared or we're fearful. We have that like stomach gut feeling when like we kind of like something, but we're scared to like tell our partner we like it because what if they think I'm a cheater? All this stuff is like that rewiring of like, no, this is okay. Just tell me, let me know, and we can talk about it, and then it'll be okay. Like that is so important to understand.
My partner, Tony, he and I had been dating for just a few weeks, and he asked if I wanted to meet one of his other girlfriends. And my immediate response was like, sure, like, does she want to meet me? Like, how is that going to work? And there was a lot of communication and conversation about that. But then getting to meet this person who was like really excited to meet me. And then I was like, oh, okay, this is not weird at all. Is this weird? And ultimately, it became a wonderful thing to be able to, and something that I had never experienced, to be able to meet someone who also loved the same person I loved, and to also then start creating a relationship, not romantically, but just like a friendship with them, to be able to, see like, oh, this can work, and people can be nice to each other, and it's not just going to be house full of cats fighting with each other over
reality TV show.
Exactly. I think B had mentioned finding community. And that's one thing I would say to anyone who's new to this, is to reach out, find your local poly communities. There's lots of groups out there. If you live in an area where you don't think there are any, there probably are, first off. But secondly, there's always the internet. Great internet full of open relationship forums, polyamory groups, all of that you can write your questions to, and many people out there who have lots of experience are very willing to help you and to give you guidance, because odds are someone has been through exactly what you're going through, or very close to exactly what you're going through.
I feel like another misconception from people who are monogamous minded was like, okay, so if like, do you ever worry about spending too much time with one partner over the other? From my understanding, the more time you spend with someone, obviously the deeper your connection is, obviously the more, the closer you will become. Some people I know personally has had partners for like years, right? And then they kind of like bring someone in, and then they're all under, it's all consensual, of course. But as far as like time management, in these open or poly relationships, how do you all kind of navigate that?
Kind of bouncing off what B was saying earlier, there are different relationships with the different people that you do bring into it. So it depends on, to me, the relationship you have with them depends on the amount of time you give to them. Whether it's more physical, then you obviously, just strictly physical, you would just fit that in whenever you could see them and meet up with them and hang out. And those times that you can't hang out with them, that's what you guys do. But if it's more emotional, then you kind of give them a little bit more time with you, because that's something that develops. Like with my ex-girlfriend, we never had sex, but we always were hanging out, and ours was just a love thing. We were just very emotionally attached to each other because we understood each other. We were connected that way. And then when I added in my boyfriend, because there was some overlap between the two at the time with the open relationship concept, and I started spending more time with him, our emotional connection kind of got strained because I wasn't spending as much time with her, which is what really led to our breakup. We still keep in contact with each other and constantly message each other just about every day or every other day. It's literally, like I said, dependent on the type of relationship that you're trying to build with them, or where you want them to fall into that spectrum of yours.
Whenever I've started a new relationship, I ask about time expectations, because we don't just have, and everyone doesn't just have another partner, or maybe you don't have another partner, but you have work, you have friends, you have hobbies, you have time for yourself, self-care time. And so whenever I start a new relationship, I ask about time expectations. How often are you looking to see me? And that being said, like I've mentioned before, I have a long distance relationship and we've been together for 6 years, and I don't consider that relationship any less deep or less valuable than my nesting partners. While we don't get as much in-person time, the time that we do spend together, we maximize and we get the most out of it. Part of that is also being honest with yourself with how much extra time do you have and how much capacity do you have? Because just because love is limitless doesn't mean time is. And I'm sure many of you have heard that phrase. You only have a certain amount of time in the day, in the week, in the month, and you have to choose wisely how to spend that.
My last question would just be, what would be something that you want to say to someone, either who's looking to get into an open relationship or who is open to the idea of being in the poly community, or a person who doesn't kind of like understand it? What's one thing that you've always wanted to kind of tell that person It could be, whatever's on your heart. It could be whatever. But this will be our last question. So after this, you can go Tabitha, but you can go first if you have anything to say.
I think to anyone new to the idea of it or just sort of interested in it at all, first off, I'd say just educate yourself. Read some books. You can Google books on polyamory, books on open relationships, and the list will go on. Even if you're just interested to know what it is, you can read articles online. There's a lot of information out there, both good and bad. So, do your research smartly. And then I guess the last piece would be, don't be scared of it. It's, even if it's not for you, it is just another relationship structure. It's not, as B said, better or worse than monogamy. And there are a million different gray areas of polyamory and open relationships, and just find what works for you. What works for me may not work for you, and it will not work for you. You got to figure out what works best for you. And that's, I find most people find that to be sort of a hard question, because lots of people don't even know, what do you want out of relationships and life and all of that. And so, expect to do, if you do enter this lifestyle, expect to do a lot of work on yourself. Expect to rewire your brain, as we all talked about, and try to join a community and educate yourself. Those are going to be some things that'll set you up for success. Or if you don't want to join and you just want to know about it, those are going to be great things to get information about it and to get some good quality information as well.
I would say to anyone considering doing this, please do not be afraid to set boundaries for yourself and discuss them with your partner as well. Because even though boundaries may seem like a small thing or not big of a deal, if you don't explicitly communicate it, you can't expect the person nor yourself to respect it, because you're never going to be comfortable in this type of lifestyle or even knowing about it if you don't set those boundaries as to how much you want to know, how much you want to communicate, what you can and cannot do. Because with my girlfriend, she could have another person on the side and I could have another person on the side. But now with my boyfriend in my monogamous relationship right now, he would just feel more comfortable if I had someone on the side. And if he wanted to have someone on the side, we could share them. And he would prefer for that person that I have on the side to not have anyone, just because of his health concerns. So I also try to be mindful of that when I'm trying to add in another person to myself. And we try to add into someone together. So it's really, each one is different. And don't expect it to be the same as someone else's.
Even when we were talking about earlier, like we live in a homogenous society, or what appears to be a very homogenous society. But then when you really look at like the media and the things that we constantly are being integrated with, like are exposed to, they're like monogamous relationships, but they're sometimes really toxic monogamous relationships, right? So we have this mentality that monogamy is the thing, but if somebody cheats, then well, if he did it this way or she did it this way, then it's not that bad. But if they did it this other way, then it is. And it's all very convoluted. And so I think doing the initial work of your research, and then also like trying to destigmatize things that maybe you've built up through religion or your family or the media or whatever. If somebody is pressuring you to do it and you think that that's the way to have a relationship with them, like you'd rather have them than not have them, I would steer away from this, right? Like only get into this if it's something that you genuinely desire for yourself, if it's something that you are open to because you find interest in it and you think it's going to work for you. I think sometimes people are put in positions where, again, like they feel like if I don't do this with this person I'm interested in, I'm going to lose them. And my advice would be, cool, lose them. Like you guys aren't aligned and that's perfectly fine. And you may be better off for it to try something else on your own or be alone. Like that's not the worst thing in the world either. More does not always mean better. Sometimes it's really quality over quantity. And sometimes the quality is just me, myself, and I, like just by yourself.
People often think that polyamory just means that you'll sleep with anybody at any time. And that's just like what it means. And I've had this a lot where I'm like going on a date or, whatever. And I mention that I'm polyamorous, or people hear that like through the grapevine, and suddenly all these people are cropping up and like, oh, so you'll sleep with me? And I'm like, no, that's not how it works. Like it's an active decision-making process of being in, and whatever that is, whether that's, hookups or emotional relationships, it's your choice and you can make that choice, and don't feel like, from the other end, don't feel like if you meet someone who's poly, that means they're automatically going to go out with you, because that's not how it works. Pointing to what Kayla was talking about, the conversations and the expectations, have these conversations frequently. And if it's helpful for you, maybe schedule them to be happening frequently. Maybe at the beginning of the relationship, you set up expectations that, you're comfortable with X, Y, and Z in this amount of time or whatever. But as you both grow as individuals and as a couple or as a triad or whatever, and as new people come in, those things are going to change, and you need to address them as they come up.
When I started, my poly relationship with Mar, I was very, confused as to how I would, explain my relationship to other people. That would include like my parents. I have one older brother, my close friends, my not so close friends, and how I, explain that my relationship kind of varies depending on who I'm talking to. So with my very close friends, I wanted them to know, the entire context of my relationship. I'm in a poly relationship, he has another partner. And it was important for me to spend the time to explain that to them so they understood, kind of what I was doing and the type of lifestyle I'm living. Whereas with, acquaintances, I don't necessarily say like, oh yeah, I have a boyfriend and, it's a poly relationship and he has another partner and we're all living together. And, you don't have to go into that. You can just refer to your boyfriend or your partner and keep it there. With my parents, it was a lot, it was in stages.
Yeah.
And that's actually a high point of contention right now with my parents, with them not really understanding the poly relationship, and that it's something that I want to do. And, they're very conservative. They're very traditional. They've been married for more than 10 years. I don't know how many years. So they, just think it's immoral and they think it's wrong. So that's been really difficult. But just in general, you don't necessarily have to, spend the time explaining your relationship to literally everybody.
And I would just say introspection is really important for personal growth in any regard, but like specifically with relationships, I think introspection is really important. I think when you're considering the things that make you different from someone else, whether it's being non-binary versus being cisgendered, or being straight versus being bi versus being gay versus like whatever, when you're considering all these things about people that make them different, ask yourself if their actions or your actions or a specific action is harmful to anyone. And so when you're considering like, oh, well, I like to sleep with men, or like I have two partners, or da-da-da-da, or like I have a wandering eye, I like to I like to flirt a lot, or like all these, like, are these things inherently harmful? Now, again, lying about these things to your partner is always going to be like a huge no, like that, unless there's some like weird kink that I don't know about where like you just get off on being lied to. But lying is always a no. But like all of these things, these individual actions, and I think that you should really like be introspective about what about those things make you uncomfortable in the context of a relationship, and that can kind of uncover a lot of things that maybe make you feel like you're incompatible with a certain lifestyle, or make you feel like you're alienated from certain people who may be LGBTQ or whatever.
That's about it. That's all the questions I had. We done. Thank y'all again for tuning in to another episode of A Lemon Squeeze. Thank you guys, especially the panel, for being bold enough, for being courageous and copying on this and expressing your feelings, being real, keeping it 100,000, whatever you want to call it. So I appreciate y'all. And yeah, I'm gonna stop the recording.